So today we're going to dive into a case that, honestly, it starts out like a postcard. We're in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. It's April 2014.
Exactly. You've got Daniel Harper, who's 32, and his new fiancée, Elena Ruiz, 29. They're on this, once-in-a-lifetime kind of trip.
And their day was just perfect, the kind of day you dream of on vacation. Sun, amazing local food, and they had plans to go explore some cenotes the next morning.
Yeah, and that context is so important to establish, right? The sense of complete normalcy, total ease and relaxation.
But then on the evening of April 17th, that all just vanishes.
It does. We know their last documented movements, and they're really specific.
Right. There's surveillance footage of them leaving the lobby of their hotel, the Hotel Mar Azul, at exactly 8:42 p.m.
And they're dressed lightly, very casually, just carrying a small backpack. Their plan was simple.
Yeah, they told the front desk they were just heading to a beach bar that a local driver had recommended, to catch the sunset.
And that detail is the first sort of subtle flag. A casual recommendation, traveling light, and then there's the text message.
Ah, the text. Elena sent one to her sister just moments before they left. It just read, "Going to see the sunset. Love you."
That simple message, promising a return, it becomes this haunting final piece of the puzzle when they just never come back.
Okay, so let's unpack this. This deep dive is really about how a bunch of small, overlooked details and some critical forensic tech basically cracked a case wide open.
A case that was initially dismissed as a routine voluntary disappearance. It completely changed everything, and it led to some pretty big changes in tourist safety.
So the next morning, Daniel and Elena don't check out. That's the first alarm bell.
Right. And hotel staff, their first thought is maybe they just missed a flight or decided to extend their trip. It's frustratingly common.
But the scene in their room told a completely different story.
A totally different story. When the staff go in, everything is there.
Everything. Like passports and money.
Everything. Passports, all their cash, their luggage is untouched. And crucially, their cell phones are sitting on the nightstand, still plugged in, charging.
Wow. So no sign of a struggle, nothing forced.
Nothing. No note. It was a scene frozen in time, basically. And it screamed, "We are coming back!"
And yet, despite all of that, the passports, the money, the phones, the authorities, they classify it as a voluntary disappearance.
That was the initial classification, yes.
How does that even make sense? I mean, what's the rationale there when the physical evidence points so clearly in the other direction?
Well, in these really high-traffic tourist areas, it's almost like an administrative default. It's the easy box to tick when there's no immediate sign of violence.
So they just assume people run off.
They often assume tourists might be fleeing debt. Or maybe they just want to start a new life. Or even, a tragic accident, like a late-night swim that goes wrong. The burden of proof gets put on the family to prove it was involuntary.
Which is just impossible to do when you're thousands of miles away.
And for the families, it was infuriating. It just flew in the face of everything they knew about Daniel and Elena.
Daniel, for example, had this really severe fear of flying. He would never, ever miss a flight he had so carefully planned.
Exactly. And Elena had just texted her sister. They had no ties to the area, no reason to just abandon their lives, their jobs, their own wedding.
So the families are saying, look at the evidence in the room. That lack of preparation, not taking your passport, that's the real indicator.
It was the critical indicator for them that something was terribly wrong. The official theories just weren't holding water. Drowning, maybe. A robbery gone wrong.
But that doesn't fit either,
Yeah.
right? Not with all the cash left in the room.
Not at all. So without any immediate leads, the trail just went cold for weeks.
Weeks go by, and it really feels like this case is just going to get buried in paperwork. But then the break comes, not from new forensics, but from human memory.
It's amazing, isn't it? The investigation completely pivots because of two witness accounts that had been, initially overlooked or dismissed.
So what was the first one?
2 weeks after they vanished, a local fisherman finally comes forward. He says he remembers seeing a man and a woman arguing on the night of April 17th, and they were near the secluded service road south of Playa del Carmen. But it's who they were arguing with that changes everything.
Right. He described two other men with them, and one of those men, he was wearing a reflective safety vest.
The kind you see everywhere, worn by hotel staff, security, resort workers. It's a universal symbol of authority.
And that's the key, that simple visual. It's the first hint of deception. This wasn't a random attack. It felt official. It was, like you said, a Trojan horse.
It was. And then that fisherman's account gets backed up by a second, totally independent witness, Someone else saw a vehicle parked on that exact same isolated road that night.
A large white utility van.
A large white utility van. So now police have a description, a location, and a vehicle type.
Which lets them finally connect the dots between eyewitnesses and technology. They start looking at local businesses. Any company that operates a fleet of white vans.
And that is where the data trail becomes undeniable. They focus on the GPS data from a van owned by a private eco-tour company.
And the GPS log for that night.
It's highly unusual. The van travels way inland, completely off its scheduled route, and, most importantly, it stops for nearly 3 hours near an abandoned limestone quarry.
That's the digital red flag. That's the proof. This wasn't a drowning. It wasn't an accident. This was planned. This was miles away from any tourist area.
And when the forensic teams finally get inside that van, they find what they're looking for.
Blood.
Trace amounts of human blood. The DNA testing comes back quickly. It's a match for both Daniel Harper and Elena Ruiz.
And just like that, the case is officially a homicide.
The focus immediately shifts to the person driving that van, a man named Luis Moreno.
And from the reports, he wasn't a first-time offender. He had a prior record for assault, but was still working multiple jobs in the tourist industry. He was an insider.
A classic example of an insider exploiting that position of trust. And this is where the whole criminal ring starts to come into focus.
So Moreno denies it at first, obviously.
Of course, but the evidence is just insurmountable. His phone records show he was in constant contact that night with another man, Javier Cruz.
And who was Cruz?
Cruz was a night security guard, the very type of person they were impersonating. And he had known ties to a small-time extortion ring that specifically went after tourists.
So they would target people who were maybe a little intoxicated, vulnerable, late at night.
Precisely. And once Moreno was confronted with all of it, the GPS, the DNA, the phone records linking him to Cruz, he confessed.
And their method. It was just so calculated, so predatory.
It was. They approached Daniel and Elena outside that beach bar, but they didn't threaten them. They presented themselves as resort security.
Right, they offered them a safe ride back. They invented a story about recent thefts in the area to scare them into the van.
It's the crux of the whole deception. It wasn't brute force at first, it was weaponized trust. Daniel and Elena thought they were doing the safe, responsible thing. They got into the van willingly.
But instead of going back to the hotel, the men drive inland, fast, straight for that quarry.
And the motive becomes very clear. It was about money. They demanded cash, bank PNs.
And Daniel resisted.
He resisted. And that's when it turned fatal. Moreno admitted that Cruz struck Daniel with a metal flashlight. Elena tried to run when the van stopped.
But she was caught.
She was caught. And both of them suffered fatal injuries out there in that desolate place.
A story of opportunism that just turned deadly in an instant. Following Moreno's confession, search teams found their remains 7 weeks later.
Yes, he gave them detailed directions. They were in the quarry, weighed down with construction debris. It was a clear attempt to hide the crime forever. Dental records confirmed their identities.
While the resolution brings some form of justice, it's the aftermath, the impact of this case that really resonates. It forced an entire region to confront a huge systemic problem.
A huge vulnerability. Let's talk about that aftermath. The legal outcome was in 2016.
Both Moreno and Cruz were convicted of aggravated kidnapping and homicide. They received sentences of 60 years each.
A severe sentence, and expected. But the administrative changes are the real legacy here, especially for you, the traveler. This case just laid bare how easily criminals could impersonate legitimate services.
So Playa del Carmen officials completely overhauled their tourist transport regulations.
Completely. And these were not minor tweaks. Now all registered drivers have to display a scannable, verifiable ID.
A massive change. And it's designed specifically to stop the kind of deception Moreno and Cruz used. If you, as the traveler, can just scan an ID and instantly verify who's giving you a ride.
That critical element of criminal impersonation is gone. It's neutralized.
And on top of that, they banned unlicensed night pickups near resorts and popular bars.
A stringent ban. It directly targeted the environment where these predators were operating, using a plain white van to pose as official security. That entire system changed because of what happened to Daniel and Elena.
And their families, they made sure this tragedy would lead to something lasting. They set up a foundation for traveler safety awareness.
They did. And if you think back to that heartbreaking final text, going to see the sunset, Elena's sister later shared it with a note. She said, "They did, and the world should never forget what followed."
So what does this all mean? I mean, This case is such a powerful lesson in how criminal opportunism targets the one thing every traveler relies on.
Trust. Trust in local systems and local people. It also shows how the smallest details, a reflective vest, a fisherman's memory, when combined with modern tech like GPS, can just break through weeks of dead ends.
The technology really was the key. It didn't just confirm a crime happened. It pointed to the where, the why, and the who after all the human leads had dried up.
Yeah, it highlights the power of tracing not just what criminals take, but where their own systems and tools take them.
The entire tragedy was built on this idea of impersonating trusted authority figures. Which brings up a really important final thought for you to consider.
In a world where systems are now being put in place to verify identity, like these new scannable IDs, how much personal responsibility should travelers still take to actively verify official help? Even when you're tired, you're relaxed, and you feel safe in a popular destination, that is something for you to think about.